Hello and welcome to Hoosier Football Tailgate here on the Believe Network and sponsored by Bet Online. Tough day in Bloomington for the Hoosiers as they fall to the Rutgers Scarlet Knights 31-21 in a really kind of an airplay game for Indiana on Saturday. We'll get into that in just a second. Here, quick something from Bet Online. Last of the major pro sport leagues are kickoff this week, and the Bet Online is your top spot for all your NBA action this season. With MLB postseason, NFL and college football, NHL in full swing, Bet Online is your number one source for wagering. News, odds, trends, and predictions all at your fingertips. Bet Online is where the game starts. Well, like I said, Indiana took a tough one on the chin this past weekend to Rutgers. Rutgers gets themselves bowl eligible with that victory for Greg Schiano and his football team. Did it in a interesting way. They kind of played a little bit of bully ball on Saturday as they pushed around Indiana's front six for the better part of the afternoon. But they're getting themselves to bowl eligibility. Indiana falls to 2-5 with 5 games remaining on the schedule. They travel to Happy Valley this week, where they will take on Penn State at noon on Fox. National coverage again for the Hoosiers. Right now, they are a 27.5 underdog against the Penn State Nittany Lions, who lost to Ohio State this past weekend. So not all things are so too happy in Happy Valley this Monday afternoon. The game Saturday had some bright spots. Not all of it was dreary and bad, but you got to point some of the good things out as well as the bad to quite understand the full entire picture of the day on Saturday. But when you really broke it down and looked at it from the perspective of the game itself as a total whole unit game, offense, defense, and special teams, it came down to 3 plays. 3 plays is what decided that ball game on Saturday, and 2 of them were special team plays, which is very ironic because I've said all along that IU has to win the special teams portion of a game to help give themselves a chance. When they have the catastrophic errors that they had Saturday on special teams, they're just not good enough right now to overcome that on offense or defense. When you have a block punt in a game, you're more likely to lose. When you muff the punt on a punt, also contributes to a loss, especially when points are scored off of that. So right there's 2 plays that Indiana gave them 10 points, the point differential in the game. And then what capped it off on Saturday afternoon was the Wimset's 80-yard run on a quarterback read play where he kept it around left end, broke into the open field, and there was nobody there. Had to be a complete bust assignment by IU, but he scampered 80 yards for a touchdown. That was the one that kind of drove the nail in the coffin. And then, of course, when Indiana went at halftime down 17-14, all things weren't, gloomy and bleak if you looked at it from a score perspective. But Rutgers got the ball on the opening drive of the second half, and they proceeded to go right down the field on a 75-yard drive. I think they had over 10 plays and went up at that point 24-14. They went 12 plays, 75 yards, and 6 minutes and 15 seconds on that drive. That Wimset scored from 1 yard out. That drive right there was the beginning of the end of Indiana on a day that started out very promising for Indiana. They went down the field and scored on their opening drive, and then unfortunately after that drive, Rutgers came right back and went right down the field again and scored. And let's take a look at some of these statistics from Saturday afternoon in Bloomington. Again, the Hoosiers take it on the chin to Penn State 31-21 on homecoming. As you look at this right here, again, this game, like I said before, came down to three snaps in special, two in special teams, and then one Chiefs score, an 80-yard touchdown drive really solidified the day for IU. But when you think about it in regards to total yardage and stuff, you're really saying the difference in this game was 25 yards of total offense, 7 plays more. They averaged 4.7, Indiana 4.6. The big differential is right here with Penn State having the ball for 37 minutes to IU's 22 minutes in the ball game. All those things are unbelievable in that regard, or in some respects not very kind to Indiana. We also look for field position. We've talked about that. Rutgers started at their 28. IU started at their 27. So nothing that, overly equates to any major advantage in this regard. So when you really look at it, pretty too evenly matched statistically speaking. But at the end of the day, when you have two major mistakes in the game and special teams, it plays a big part on who's going to win the game. IU's game started out, like it was going to be a bright sunny day. They went right down the field and scored on their opening drive, taking 3 minutes off the clock. They went 75 yards. 4th and 8, we talked about gambling in certain situations where, there was a high probability in your favor. Well, this one was on 4th and 8. Sorsby scrambled to his left. Cooper got lost in their coverage. They got their eyes in their backfield, and Sorsby found him in the end zone for a big touchdown drive on the first drive of the day. And again, that's everything looked like it was going to start out well, but that didn't stop Rutgers. They're a mentally tough football team. What do? They come right back, orchestrate their own 15-play, 72-yard drive, eat up 8 minutes of time on their big drive and big play. Indiana couldn't get off the field on a 3rd and 7. Wimsett actually did get the line to gain in a video review. IU had thought they had stopped it, but the interesting thing here, there was only one third down play on that entire drive, 15 plays. So the majority of their first downs came on second down for the most part, or first down. So that had a big deal on their productivity on the day. Then the bad thing happened. 4th and 13, they get a punt block by Loyal. He hits it, blocks it. Rogers picks it up. He scores the touchdown from the Indiana 32, and field goal was good. And all of a sudden, it's a 14-7 ball game. And then for the next 3 or 4 series here, it was kind of interesting because 3 plays, 6 yards for Indiana, 3 plays, 2 yards for Rutgers, 3 plays, -4 yards for Indiana. Then Rutgers goes for it on 4th and 2 from Indiana's 42-yard line. They don't get it. 4th and 2, IU's defense steps up back-to-back times where they only gave up a yard total on each play. They get the stop, and what's Indiana do? Big play here. This is a big part of the game. They take that big play by IU's defense, getting the ball back, stopping Rutgers on 4th and 2, and they go right down the field and score on a 4-play, 59-yard drive in 1:25. And it was in the final 4 minutes of the half there, and they tied the ball game up 14-14 at that point in time. And then the defense comes right back out, and they get to 3rd and 14. They sack Wimsett. Rutgers is going to punt from their 45. At this point in time, you think they're just going to run the clock out, go on the halftime tied 14-14. What happens? The second miscue for the punt return unit this time. Lucas fumbles the punt. Rutgers Longer beam recovered it at the Indiana 20. Now, Indiana does a good job there and holds them out of the end zone and only gives up to 21-yard field goal by Patel. And it was 17-14 at halftime. Nothing overly gloomy in that other than the 2 plays, the 10 points they gave Rutgers in the special teams was a big differential in that first half. IU's offense and defense in some respects only gave up 7 points in that first half. In terms of Rutgers earning their points by making them drive 15 plays, 75 yards. They drove the field. They got it done. You got to tip your hat to them. But that was the only 7 points. You got the block punt for a touchdown and the muff punt where Indiana's defense actually holds them to 3. So some, pretty big wins there in the first half, but you didn't feel that way. It might as well have been 30-14 at that point in time because it's Indiana's so fragile right now. The energy is so negative at times that it's palatable, even on Saturday afternoon. Second half comes, what happens? They go right down the field and score 12 plays, 75-yard drive. So the first drive of each half for Rutgers ends up as touchdowns. And I know some offensive categories, that is a goal for every offense to score on the first drive of every half or get points on the first drive of every half. They do it by going down the field in 12 plays, 75 yards. And, IU has a big chance to get off on 3rd and 7 here. They do a good job of starting, but they get them to 4th and 4, and they convert from the 34-yard lines as Wimsatt completes a pass for 8 yards and gets the first down on 4th and 4. IU gets that play. They get off the field. It keeps their number of plays down, but now they give up the big touchdown. So 12 plays, 75 yards, 24-14. And that's kind of how that goes in that quarter there. And then Wimsatt comes back and really doesn't mount anything. Then Indiana has to drive. It's 4th and 6. And this is where Sorsby's got to grow up and can't throw it shorter than the first down. You got to make sure you're throwing it beyond the sticks. And that right there killed a 9-play, 43-yard drive, and it finished in Rutgers territory. So that play there, and then, of course, the 80-yard touchdown by Wimsatt, that was the one that kind of dictated the game overall on Saturday. And that was it from Rutgers and Indiana on Saturday afternoon. Rutgers got the win on a day that, they did it by rushing the football. Nothing overly sophisticated on the front from the standpoint that Indiana just wasn't very good against the run. And then when Wimsatt scored the 80-yard touchdown run, that was the end of it all because that was the second cheap score that they got on the day. And so you add that to the punt and the botched kick or punt fumble, and that's the ball game. That's the ballgame right there. Those 3 plays, pretty indicative of the day. And you could add the 4th play was the first drive of the 3rd quarter when they came out and went down the field and score. Right now, Indiana's a very fragile football team. You could sense it on Saturday. Anytime something negative happened to them, they're just not mentally tough enough right now to overcome things. And that's fairly evident when you go into halftime 17-14 and things don't go quite your way the first drive of the second half, and everything from that point forward, it was over. They could have turned the lights out after that first drive of the 3rd quarter because at that point in time, mentally, IU was beaten. They were beat. And right now, everything for them is not positive. It's negative. Whether it's the people around them, whether it's the guys in school down there on the campus, they're just not a very, very tough football team right now. And they're dealing with a lot of fragile kids that need something positive to happen for them, because when you look at it from the standpoint, you talk about 3 plays in a ball game that cost you a game, and and it had nothing to do with offense and defense. It had everything to do with special teams. That's it. Yeah, the offense wasn't good enough on Saturday. They didn't get enough yardage. They didn't get enough chuck plays. And yes, Indiana can't give up the big scores, an 80-yard run because they missed an assignment. Yeah, those are all true. But the fact of the matter is they got beat Saturday because of special teams. And the fact of the matter is you cannot overcome special team errors that end in points against you. It's just statistically proven. It's too much of too much to overcome, even for good teams, let alone a team that is fragile as Indiana is at this point in time. So, Sorsby's day I thought was okay, wasn't great. There are things that he does well. There are things that you wonder what he's thinking. And that is indicative of a young redshirt freshman quarterback. That's the other problem, that Indiana is wanting their quarterbacks to play like 3-year starters. And here's two kids that have only seen the field for the first time this year. They've played a total of 7 games thus far, 6-7 games thus far. But when you look at even Sorsby, he's started 1, maybe 2. He's played in, 3 or 4 of them. But that's the other thing. Indiana, people are wanting Sorsby or Taven Jacksons to play like 3-year starters. Well, that's not going to happen. And because of that, and because they're playing a redshirt freshman and don't have that upperclassman type of player, that's a big problem. You just don't have enough around them right now to bring them to a level they need to be at. And that's why they've got to start targeting balls down the field more. But on 1st and 10, you're afraid to take a shot because your probability of converting that drive and getting going 3 and out is highly probable if you have an incomplete pass on 1st and 10. Well, you're beyond that right now. You got to start trying to find ways to make things happen if you want to overcome some things. But Sorsby's a redshirt freshman. Taven Jackson's redshirt freshman. They're not going to play like they're 3-year starters and seniors. They're just not. I mean, there's no way. There's no coach in America that's going to elevate their play enough for them to be playing like they're 3-year starters. Period. And it doesn't matter what coordinator you have in there. Yes, there are things that you can do to protect them. There are things you can do to help them along and get their confidence and stuff. That's understood. That's a no-brainer. But you're not going to make them play like a 3-year starter and do the things that you see some of these 3-year starters do, where they take over games and, have miraculous plays and stuff like that. Indiana doesn't have that player. They don't have that player at multiple positions right now. So his game was okay. Offensive performance, of course, wasn't good enough. I thought the offensive line played pretty decently all day long. The run game at times was bright. At times it wasn't bright because the ineffectiveness to consistently move the pile. But they did have one of their more productive games rushing the football. I thought Turner helped that equation. They didn't play Henderson, which I was surprised at. But maybe they're just protecting him. But the other two played pretty good. Turner especially had some good solid runs there. Defense, again, too many breakdowns in assignment football. And then, of course, the 80-yard cheap score. Can't let it happen. But overall, they gave them, with one exception of the drive where Wimsatt scored the 80-yard drive. That was a cheap score. The other drives that they had, the first drive of the game as well, that they went down and scored, they made them earn that drive. The other drive that they went down, they made they had to earn that drive, which was the first play of the second half. Okay. And then those were the two big scores that they earned. And then, of course, the cheap score. So 21 points. You had the 10 points. The other ones, they had block punt and runs it in for a touchdown, and block punt that ends up inside the 20, and at least they held them to 3. But Again, you made them earn it. You got to tip your hat. They earned it. They beat you up at the line of scrimmage. That in itself. And then, of course, special teams was a complete debacle. I said all year long, that's a phase of the game that IU must win each and every week. They cannot lose the special teams phase of the game. They're just not good enough offensively or defensively to overcome huge mistakes in special teams. And that played out on Saturday. Right now, like I said, they're a fragile team. You can tell in the body languages when things go bad, it's not very good. They got 5 games remaining to get 4 wins to get bowl eligible. Yeah, it's a tough task. Yeah, it's going to be hard to accomplish, but is it unattainable? No, I don't think it's unattainable. They're going to have a tough game at Penn State, but then you got Wisconsin at home, and I think you got Michigan State at home. You got Purdue and Illinois. So, it's been done. They've won 4 in a row before under Tom Allen. Now, whether that can happen again, we'll wait and see. Right now, unless they change their mindset, no. They got to change their mindset. And I know some of that's coaching, some of that's kid. The kids are more resilient than the coaches. Kids bounce back better than coaches do. I'm just telling you. Coaches, it eats away at them for a few days until you get about Wednesday. Kids have a tendency to come back Sunday and wash that game away and move on to the next one. Where coaches, it stews with them for a while. Kids are more resilient than coaches ever will be in that regard. But they need 4 wins, and they got 5 games left, so there is opportunity there. The last thing I wanted to discuss here is Tom Allen. Tom Allen is a good person. He's a good football coach. Unfortunately, right now he's 2-20 in 22 games in the Big Ten, and he'll be the first one to tell you that's not good enough. And it's not. It's not good enough. You're 2-22. It affects your overall program. It affects your ability to effectively recruit when you're up trying to recruit against some of the marginal Big Ten teams that you're trying to go up against week in, week out. And 2-20 in the Big Ten is not a good place to be overall. The probability that they do something with Tom is very unlikely. He's got a $20 million buyout, but here's what I will say. You can't let $20 million be the excuse why you don't do something when you feel something is warranted. So if there's the belief and the feeling they need to make a change in Bloomington, they can't use the $20 million as an excuse of why they can't do something. The other problem they have is multiple of their assistant coaches' contracts run through 24. So not only would you have that $20 million, you'd probably have another $1.5 million of assistant coaches' salaries that you would have to buy out. So there you're talking about $21 million. So, it is what it is in that regard. Tom got a great contract after he won a couple games. Good for his agent, and it's good for a good person. I'm not sitting here advocating that they make a change either. We all know in college football, it's a business. It's about money in that regard. And 2-20 in the Big Ten is not good enough. So I think you got to start looking at some things that go deeper than coaching, and it goes right to what you're recruiting. If you're recruiting good enough, stars and all that BS is that's typically BS. You're at Indiana, you're going to have to bring in players that are marginal Big Ten players, and you've got to develop them into being very good Big Ten players. And you've got to get lucky in some of your recruiting battles that you get a kid that's a difference maker. But ultimately, it comes down to development. And that's the one question I think they're going to have to answer, is if they're developing the kids that they got in the program. Because right now, they're not good enough at all 11 positions depth-wise to, overcome some of the mistakes that you're seeing on the field, because some of it's athletically tied in that regard. But those are the questions that you have to ask at the end of the year. And I believe that Indiana has to find ways to win 4 games. Now, whether they can do it or not, that's the $64,000 question. Right now, a fragile team. uncertain, too many things that happen in light of what happens on the field and impacts them way too much during the course of the game, especially when you see the other team go down the field in the first drive of the second half and your heads go down. Well, what did Rutgers do after Indiana took the opening drive, went down the field and scored? Didn't phase them one bit. They got the ball, went down and scored themselves. And see, that's the difference between the two. That right there, that drive proved why there's a big difference between what Rutgers is right now and what Indiana is right now. Rutgers is a tough, mentally tough football team that doesn't let things impact them. IU is a team right now that's fragile, and when something goes bad, it impacts them, and they can't mentally fight through it. And it's too much of the head hanging and the bad body language. So those are some of the things that, coaching staff's going to have to address both now and throughout the rest of the year and into the off season. And we'll see what happens as it pertains to coaching and things like that. But, Tom Allen's done all he can do. He's changed coordinators twice. He's fired an offensive line coach, and he's fired an OC in the middle of the year. And, those are not, sometimes you wish those are quick fixes, but they're not. And in some cases, they create more problems than they're worth in overall when it's finally said and done. But we appreciate your being with us here today on the Hoosier Football Tailgate, and want to ask a favor. If you could go to YouTube and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're aware of when something drops on that, as well as going to Apple and Spotify and give us a rating, and also giving us a review. That helps us very much in terms of getting things out to people that enjoy football, but also have a love for Indiana football. Want to get that for them. But thanks again for watching us here today on the Believe Network, sponsored by BetOnline. We appreciate BetOnline sponsorship of the Hoosier Football Tailgate. I'll see you Thursday for the Penn State review. But for now, I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. Thank you for watching the Hoosier Football Tailgate right here on the Believe Network. Goodbye, everybody.